Hello, I'm Barbara Mueller, and you're listening to peacepodcast.org. And are you in for a program today? You know, I have been president of the United Nations Association Santa Barbara and Tri-County chapters. And today we're going to have Sharon Byrne, our president since 2022, when she became president of the United Nations Association and the Tri-Counties. That means we go from San Luis Obispo clear down to Ventura, to the border of Los Angeles. Now, this is a very big territory, and Sharon has done a fantastic job of working with the homeless when she was the president of the Montecito Association, working to bring homeless people into their true dignity. And then she did the program called End It, to bring the awareness that sex trafficking even is happening in our Tri-Counties area. Imagine. And so when we started to think about our Peace Prize this year, we read the book, Global World Citizen by Jane Olson. And we realized this marvelous woman is in our Santa Barbara County. So first, let me just say, welcome, Sharon Byrne. We are so delighted you are here. Did I leave anything out of your bio?
I have also served as a delegate to the United Nations Conference on the Status of Women since 2020, and I work full-time now in advancing and protecting women's rights.
You know, I think that's really noble. Advance and protect the rights of women and girls. So many programs today are there, but yours is a very special one, and I thank you for that. And I thank you for all the work you've been doing to keep our Santa Barbara United Nations Association out there in front of people, saying we are part of the United Nations. Now, September 21 is coming up, and that's why I had you on today, because September 21 is the International Day of Peace. And every year at this time, and this is our 8th annual Peace Prize. All right, Sharon, tell me more about this Peace Prize for 2024.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored to actually be speaking with you this morning because you were one of the co-creators of the Santa Barbara Peace Prize. It was an idea that was born out of our United Nations Association. And, you know, we recognized that we had been attracting people that are here in our local community that clearly care about what's going on in the world and that had a global mind. They wanted to act locally, but think globally. And we noticed that we were attracting those individuals. And as we found out some of their stories of the work that they've been doing in the world, you know, as a little team, we said, you know, gosh, there ought to be a way, you know, that we can highlight their achievement and make the wider community, you know, understand that we have really, really good citizens here. I know, you know, Santa Barbara has more nonprofits per capita than probably any city in the world. It's a big-hearted kind of community. And it clearly care, you know, people here clearly care about their surrounding, you know, community, but also the wider world. So the team got together way back in 2017 and established the criteria for the Peace Prize. And the criteria is very simple. You have to do one of three things. And some people were doing more than just one of these three things. But the first was you needed to be waging the cause of peace in the world. You had to do something that was going to materially advance peace in the world. The second category is you had to be doing something that was advancing the cause of human rights, and you were working, you know, to do something in that field. And then the third category was you were helping advance the capacity of developing nations. So we know people, for example, that have gone off and installed, you know, water wells, right, in countries where the women were having to walk 5 miles a day to get the water. So, you know, when we have these locals doing this wonderful work in the world, it makes sense to come together as a community and celebrate and vault that work. And so, you know, we've had wonderful awardees that have done things like, you know, advanced a peace resolution, right, through the UN to call for a day without war. That was one of our winners, right? We have had winners that have gone off and helped start rape crisis centers for women all over the world. We've had winners that have helped actually write you know, constitutions that are based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that could be adopted through the United Nations. So we've had some incredible, we've had women that have, you know, done things with nomads in Nigeria. I mean, we've had some, and one of our winners actually is disaster response. And so this is about advancing capacity. And so, you know, Shelterbox, which is a lovely local nonprofit here, you know, was deploying all over the world in disaster situations. And they were providing instant shelter, food, and resources for people that were recovering from disaster. So it's amazing that a small community like this, some 90,000 souls, could produce people that would go out into the world and do this kind of work. And so the Peace Prize was created to help raise awareness of the work that they're doing, help our community get inspired by this kind of work. That I would say, if we've learned anything from the Peace Prize, you've always told us, this African proverb of, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with others. And we've seen that in all the awardees of the Peace Prize. But we've also seen something else, that one person can step up, one person can decide to commit themselves to a humanitarian cause, and one person can make a difference. Now, they pull others with them and they help, lead them this way. But it's very inspiring to go, every year we do this ceremony, and every year we're all like, there couldn't be a better winner. And then we all think, who's going to be next year? And then next year we always find an even better winner. So we're always shocked and amazed at how this community produces a plethora of people that go out into the world and do amazing things, just amazing acts of courage and humanitarianism. So that is the Santa Barbara Peace Prize. And that's why we really we always get very excited about September 21st, which this year is a very special anniversary, I understand, about the International Day of Peace. But that is the Peace Prize. And we do award it on the International Day of Peace for a reason, which is we want to tie those things together. And we wanted to also help raise awareness about the International Day of Peace as a city of peace. Santa Barbara is a designated city of peace. We sought that designation. We had some council members help us achieve it. And so we all together are trying very hard to advance the cause of peace by being a city of peace, celebrating the International Day of Peace, and awarding the Santa Barbara Peace Prize.
I am so proud of us. We have worked hard to be inspiring and mentorship. It's like what I feel the Peace Prize does is it shows people that you may not feel like you can do anything. You may even be discouraged. You may think, oh, I can't do anything. And then we bring the Peace Prize to their awareness. And it is about awareness, because once you find a problem, it's up to you. So many of our Nobel Peace Prize winners have said, I couldn't sit back. I had to do something. And the same thing with those who have been honored by our Peace Prize, like Deepa Willingham. She started the school in India at the age of 60. It's not your age, it's your determination, right, Sharon?
It absolutely is. And you're right. It's people that knew something needed to be done, and it turned out they were the people to go do something, and that and in a case of a couple of our Peace Prize winners, they were just, they just responded to sort of a call, right, if you will, a call to the soul of, something needs to be done in this area. And I think Deepa is one of those that, she understood that Indian women and Indian girls face the risk of being married off as children, and she wanted to do something to prevent that. Now, I will tell you, from the Conference on the Status of Women, this is a topic every year at the United Nations, right? Every year, how do we stop child bride, how do we stop child marriage, especially for girls, because it really just cuts off their life. And Deepa, didn't want to necessarily have that debate. She decided she was just going to go do something to provide an education for these girls as a way of keeping them from being child brides, right? And it's a very impressive what she did. And Pace Academy is just a huge runaway success. So yeah, when we see those, and Deepa is a local. Deepa lives, she lives in Santa Barbara County, but she did this, and she taught these women skills so that they could start micro businesses, so that they then, once they graduated from Pace Academy, they would have a way to generate income for themselves. So she was really all about the liberation of women from a very difficult cultural circumstance for which there was no remedy in law. There was no remedy in the international bodies. And so she decided that she would go do something on the ground and fix it herself. So that's just huge, right? And that is kind of the spirit that we see in a lot of our awardees, is that they answer a call, they realize no one's coming to help, no one's coming to fix this. And so then they do something materially themselves to fix it. And, one of our awardees was the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, right? And so what have they been up to? Trying to stop, nuclear proliferation since the 80s, right? They're wonderful at this, and they never stop advocating. They never stop. We've also had folks that are like, Shelterbox in the disaster aid and recovery business, right? So Direct Relief International was one of our awardees. They're famous, they're local here. And every time there's some kind of terrible situation with lack of medicines, disaster relief international response, right? So, or direct relief international response, and ships medicines to countries in need, right? So right to help in that moment. So the fact that one little town could spur, kind of all that, one little community, because even the Tri-Counties community is not that big, right? It's really small. It's probably less than 500,000 people, sum total. And all of those people to be able to do that, to answer that call, and to want to do something to materially improve conditions in the world, like, ooh, that spoke to our hearts, right, as the United Nations Association, and we wanted to really honor that. So the Peace Prize event itself is usually a night of nonstop inspiration that, Barbara, you always give a really wonderful kickoff speech on why peace is so important in the world. And as you know, peace doesn't just happen. And it isn't just the absence of war. You have to actually pursue the condition of peace. You have to really aggressively, you have to wage the cause of peace, very much so. And so that night is very inspirational. And this year's winner is often, as we always say, we couldn't find a better winner. We say it every year. And every year we're like, oh, we'll never top this, like this is truly the best. And then the next year we're like, wow, that we didn't know about this person, right? And we're so excited to highlight their work. So yeah, this year's winner, truly, truly inspirational. It just
And
really,
an inspiration just to listen to you describe the past winners. Every one of them made me realize what one person can do. Sometimes they're the inspiration, as with Deepa. I keep referring to Deepa because she took this courage to start a school without a funding, and now people fund her and they find her. And then the Rotarian magazine did a 5-page spread on Deepa because they realized, wait a minute, if we have 22,000 Rotarians around us, clubs rather, why can't they do something like Deepa to really change the way people are approached and taking care of their lives? So I'm looking at Jane Olson, our wonderful Jane Olson. Jane Olson is a Santa Barbara woman, and I've been reading her book, World Citizen, and it just brings tears to my eyes to read the stories that she had the courage to go into these Nicaragua and into Russia and into places where wars were going on and atrocities. And I kept wanting to cry. And then I read in her front of her book, the soul would have no rainbow if our eyes had no tears. So I let those tears flow so that they're like cleansing me as I read her book, World Citizen. She was so inspired by television programs that allowed her to see the true situation of some of these awful places. And then she had 3 children, and her husband said, go to Nicaragua, find out what's going on. And that's just the beginning of the story. This book is, let me just see how many pages there are, because I'm just in the middle of it.
It's an enormous book, right? And it's full of really good stories.
125 pages. And then she writes a letter to my children at the end. And she said, while writing this memoir, I realized how different my life has been from that of many parents. And I thank you for letting me chronicle the world as it is today. She had 2 gifts. She had a camera and the ability to write. And I always look at you, Sharon, as one of our greatest writers. And that's why we've had so many successful events. Sharon knows how to put words into a way that relates to you as a person. And that's why I wanted to start with Sharon as we celebrate the month of peace. The International Day of Peace is celebrating its 40th anniversary. I remember reading about my late husband, Robert Mueller, in Pathways to Peace, who founded this International Day of Peace. And then a calendar designer said, I heard about the International Day of Peace, and he put it on the calendar. He didn't go through the United Nations or anything. He just did it. And that's what I want us to know. You can just do it. Don't wait for all the protocols to give you permission. Do the peace work that you know you can do. So Sharon, why did we choose September 21, and why did we choose Jane Olson?
Well, September 21 is the International Day of Peace. And as you pointed out, it is also the 40th anniversary of the International Day of Peace. So we have a lot to celebrate this year. So I think Jane Olson, Barbara, you mentioned something I think it's really important, that along with that sort of one person can, make a difference, that if you wait for all the conditions to be perfect, oh, I need an extra degree. Oh, I need more funding. Oh, I need a support team behind me. All of the people that we've ever encountered in awarding the Peace Prize never did any of that. They had something that they knew they had to do. They had no idea how they were going to achieve it. They had no funding. They had no resources. They didn't know anyone. They just decided like, this has to be done. I guess I am the person to do it. And then they set off on their path to go do it. And then everything else showed up, right? That they had to pull together these coalitions. So we saw
Universe
that.
supported them, didn't it? After
Yeah.
they made that decision, the decision is the key.
The decision is the key. You have to decide that this mission is for you. You are going to do it. You have no idea how you're going to accomplish it. And Jane is a case in point. You mentioned that, Jane was happily married, had the 3 kids, life was good, and she saw some of these global crises going on and thought, I need to do something. What does, a married woman, in New York do? Like what do you do? And, we're in Los Angeles. And so she decided to get involved with Human Rights Watch International. And she got trained as a recorder and observer in the field. And then she got to go on some of these missions. She had to self-fund, it was all volunteer. There was no pay involved in any of this. And you're right, Jane had some talents. And in addition to being a very good photographer, Jane also was a first-class humanitarian, meaning that she would sit with you, kind of hold your pain, open up, encourage you to open up and unfold in your story. And this would have been very hard to do in a conflict situation where you're not sure who to trust, right? You don't know who's who, and could you be hurt for speaking your story, in a conflict situation? So very dangerous work, but also difficult work because you have to establish this trust and get the person to really unfold their story to you. And then you have to capture that story in the Human Rights Watch International framework and record any observations. You note in her book that she has the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the back of the book, right? So she is operating off of that human rights framework passed by the United Nations in 1948. And we celebrated that many times too, let's honor the fact that we have this Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Our country, the United States, signed off on it, but has never incorporated it into our US Constitution, which is unfortunate. Other countries have done this. Anyway, Jane took the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and that's how she was able to recognize when there was a human rights violation occurring. Then she would be able to document it by personal story. This is what the observers do. And then she would be able to take that back and share it with the world. And that's huge power. I mean, that's just an enormous kind of return on investment, if you will, of like
a witness to so much. And that's what
a witness.
Human Watch does. They witness these atrocities. And I remember one story where she was in a refugee camp and this girl was curled up in a bed in the fetal position. And she was so traumatized, she just prayed nobody would even pay attention to her. She just had to heal. And Jane went to her car and brought in her knitting and sat by the wall in the back. And she just knitted until people went to her rather than she going to them.
Exactly. She knew how to sit and hold the energy. And this is a particular talent of women, by the way. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to pursue. You hold the space for others to come relate to you, and you create that sense of trust. And she's really, really a master at this. And then they will open up and tell you, right, what it is that you need to now take. And it's not so much that you want to take their personal gory details worldwide. No. What you're trying to do is, from their story, ascertain that human rights violations have occurred, which human rights violations have occurred. And then that is what gets now taken to the world to create pressure for governments to act and stop these abuses. So one woman had an enormous storytelling power to be able to get those stories, right? From the places that were war-torn, bombed, horrors. She went to places that most of us would not go. Most of us would not go to Bosnia in the 90s because of the conflict situation. Azerbaijan is not going to be on our, tourist list, right? Nicaragua is not going to be on the tourist list. She had the courage to go into many places in the world that had conflict, tense situations, and then to be able to open up this trust, to be able to hear these personal stories, and to be able to then translate it to these were the human rights violations that have occurred, and to bring the power of a world lens of scrutiny to a human rights abuse situation, right? To be able to create change. That's enormous. And she'll tell you, I did all this as a volunteer, as a mom, I was raising kids, I was a wife, and I just did all this in my free time, kind of a thing. And it's very impressive that someone felt so called to respond to that, and that this was the avenue that they found to be able to shine the light on human rights abuses and stop them.
You
That's
know,
very powerful work.
it's so powerful and it's so important. And her mission and her passion overcame her fear. She said she was afraid to go into some of these places, and yet it was her mission. And even on the cover, she's carrying her journal. She jotted notes to every single moment when she was looking at these atrocities so that we could experience. As I said, I felt like crying so many times as I'm reading her. It's like a movie, a war movie, only worse. And she says, as again, with so much love and gratitude for her children and her husband for allowing her to do this. She had to leave her children and her husband to spend this time at no pay, no guarantees that anybody's going to pay attention to her, but she took it upon herself to put a chronicle together. And boy, is this book needed now. This global world citizen book, it's called World Citizen, Journeys of a Humanitarian by Jane Olson. Boy, if we're not going through this again, this book puts you right there at the front of these atrocities. And so I am honored to honor her. I am honored to have you be here today, Sharon, to show again the passion that you have for peace and women and girls and men and human rights. That's what we're all here for. It takes tremendous courage and selflessness to do the work that Jane has done.
I 1,000% agree. And meeting her was entirely accidental. As you mentioned, I used to be the executive director of the Montecito Association, and we had started a homeless outreach project. Jane resides in Montecito. And when she heard about the homeless outreach project, and we wanted to do it from a very humanitarian perspective, which is we're going to go make a relationship, we're going to build some trust, we're going to offer, some solutions to help someone leave homelessness of their own free volition. So this isn't like let's arrest them out of, or move them along. It wasn't a punitive strategy. It was much more a humanitarian approach strategy. Jane heard that I was doing this work in Montecito and immediately came and introduced herself and went with me several times along the railroad tracks to make relationships, to almost like a human rights watch observer on the team. Just she wasn't doing it to, to sort of, frighten me, nothing like that. She was a full-on partner, right? She said, I love this approach. I think this is the right way to go. Every time we got a win, we would publicize that story and say, this is how you turn a life around. So Jane has never stopped being this humanitarian. She didn't retire. She's never stopped being this humanitarian. And I don't think she ever will, right? This is kind of who she is in her soul, which I love. So it's a terrific honoree. And you're right, the stories matter, and they matter so much now, because there is so much conflict going on in the world. And Jane highlights some of the things that happened, some of the rapes, right? And the assaults, and what happened to children in some of these conflict situations. And it is happening now again, almost as though we didn't live through all this before and haven't learned a thing, right? Like that, it's terrible. So connecting with her and she also includes some of the notes that she took, right? Some of her journal pages, right, in the book. And yeah, it's really instructive to read like how Jane approaches every situation as though it was the very first one, that it's unique, that there's different set of circumstances here. It's important to understand the different factors, but that at the end of the day, what she is looking for is, have human rights abuses and violations occurred? And if they have, we must make a report. We must be a witness to the world. I don't know that many of us want to go out and witness what has happened to others in conflict situations. That takes a special kind of courage and a huge.
Oh, you said the word courage. I remember reading recently, it takes courage to not be discouraged. And I think she had that courage to not be discouraged and the courage to chronicle what she was experiencing. Well, Sharon, September 21 is just around the corner, and we're devoting the whole month to really allowing people to understand Jane Olson. and understand why the United Nations Association is so important. I know our website, UNASB.org, has a lot of information, and I would love to have people buy tickets. How would they buy tickets for this event that is at Pascucci's restaurant on September 21?
It is, and we love Pascucci's as a venue because the owner there loves to overfeed you, which is awesome. We always do some hors d'oeuvres and some wine, and just really fet our winner. And Laura Knight there is just top-notch hospitality. I mean, she just makes sure that whatever you need, you got it, and you're well looked after. The food is delicious. So yeah, we will be doing it September 21st at 4 p.m. at Pascucci on 509 State Street. And tickets are very affordable and purchasable on our website, unasb.org. If you're a UNASB member, if you are part of our United Nations of Santa Barbara, you get a little discount. So why don't you take out a membership while you're at it so that you both get the membership and the discount. And then we welcome you to join us and fet Jane Olson as our 2024 Peace Prize winner. And we're super excited. We usually have some of our elected officials often turn up to help us produce, give away the award, and they will bring resolutions honoring the nominee and their accomplishments, which is great. So we've got that in the works. We're hoping that Congressman Carbajal will join us that evening, and some of our city council members, and possibly our state senator. So very exciting night. And usually John Palminteri comes and runs the camera right for us. And so we look forward to seeing everybody there and enjoying Laura's terrific hospitality, and then really honoring someone who is this world humanitarian, just an amazing soul.
And
really,
it's going to be on, yeah, Sharon, it's going to be on September 21 and from 4 o'clock to 5:30. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Afternoon. And it would allow us all to honor Jane and also to celebrate each other, because so many of us are unsung heroes. We do so much, we do as much as we can, and yet we want to make sure that we honor you too. So September 21 is a night for all of us, and I hope you will join us. And Sharon made a plea for you to maybe consider joining our beautiful United Nations Association. We would love to have you be a member. Our goal is to get 100 members, and we'll do it by September 21 with your help. When you're watching this podcast today, invite a friend to go with you to unasb.org. And 2 of you signups. If everybody asks 5 people to join us on that evening, what a wonderful crowd we'll have. And Jane deserves a big crowd. All of us deserve to be honored for the work that we do for peace. And with that, Sharon, do you have a last word?
Yeah, I do actually. That, we hope that, in seeing this podcast and seeing the past nominees and winners of the Santa Barbara Peace Prize, that everyone will feel like, gosh, I can do something, right? I can do something. And you may think what you're going to do is so small, and you may think, oh, it's not going to make any difference. Who knows? You might be you might be called for a reason. You might be the perfect person, for that situation. So don't turn away from it. And then, yeah, come to the Peace Prize event at Pascucci, because you will meet 25 new friends that also care about global, concerns, care about the work of the UN, and would be a great part of your, network. So we totally encourage you to do that. We find that a lot of people connect up with each other at our events. Oh, that's interesting. You did this, or you were from that country, or, you also have been to the UN. So, if you're looking for folks, a community of spirit that really cares about the world, this is it. Please come. We'd love to.
From Sharon's lips that we want you there. We want you at our United Nations of Santa Barbara Tri-County 8th Annual Peace Prize. That's Pascucci's Restaurant. And go to unasb.org and sign up today. And I love you, and peace be with you.